from the low desert, beautiful Tempe, Arizona, and coming to us from beautiful. Are you in Flint, Michigan?
Right next to Flint, so
Y-
call it Flint, Michigan. Yes.
Okay, and Flint, Michigan, two places that are very much just alike in so many ways. Is Politics in the Past with Robert Ferguson, brought to you by the Center for American Institutions at Arizona State University. My guest today is Adam Mizel, who is the CEO of Us United. He's going to tell us a lot more about that, about himself and Us United, and it's really important and really interesting campaign here. But before we get too far into this, you are in Michigan. The eyes of the country are upon Michigan today.
Sure.
With It's Tuesday, August 4th, so it's primary day in Michigan. You want to tell, and one of your friends is or your colleagues is running for the Democratic nominee for governor there. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. And thanks for having me around. It's great to be here. And as you said, it is an primary election day in Michigan, and there's a lot of people focused and talking about what is happening in this state and what it means for national politics. Before diving in, backing up, Us United is we'll talk more about is a movement to build unity in America by giving all of us the tools to reunite our country. So we're not a political organization.
Right.
Like, because the minute you delve into politics, you can't build unity. I think most Americans find politics really frustrating and really difficult and somewhat disgusting, right? And if you're there, they're not going to listen to you. And our whole point is bringing people together. So we're not the minute you touch red and blue, you can't bring people together. You notice our colors purple. I'm the purple guy. I'm always in purple because we need more of that. And we'll talk about, all the trips across the country, all the things I've done that convince me that, well, Americans have convinced me that we're not as divided as per, shown to us by politicians and by media because they tell me that. That tells me we're not. We'll dive into all that. But back to what you said, politics today. Um, yes, a close friend of mine and one of the co-founders of Us United is a guy named Sheriff Chris Swanson from Genesee County, Michigan, where I am. So from Flint being the biggest city, and Chris is running for governor of Michigan. Um, in the middle, I mean, his campaign slogan is to protect, to serve, and to unify, right? And I met him 5 years ago, but when Us United was sort of becoming an idea. We'll go back to that story, and I knew he was the real deal when I came to Flint, and I saw every sheriff's car said to protect, to serve, and to unify, not the usual protect and serve. By adding just those two words, right, to the mission of a law enforcement office, you change the entire job. Think about that, right? The entire job is completely different when you add those two words. I was like, this guy is the real deal. Um, and so, yes, he's running for governor today in the primary. And so, somewhere in the wee hours of the evening or morning, we will find out whether he secures the Democratic nomination. And again, that's not part of Us United. It's a
No.
completely different thing. But it's certainly interesting to be here today and yesterday, um, because the real focus in Michigan is the Senate race and the Democratic Senate primary between Abdul al Sayed, Abdul al Sayed, and
Haley
Haley
Stevens.
Stevens. And yeah, and I mean, on the ground here, everyone I've spoken with expects Abdul al Sayed to win today, sorry. And they don't expect it to be close, which, if true, would certainly be a unique development in that you see a very progressive candidate winning in a purple state. He's clear. He's not a democratic socialist in the same vein as Zoran Mamdani's and a variety of the Milak Kiroses and others who have won elections and certainly created a lot of debate of what the heck all that means. I saw a quote from outside this morning in the paper. They said, "I know, I know what capitalism is. I understand what capitalism is, and I like capitalism." Right?
Hmm.
So different perspective, progressive on a lot of things, but anyway, a whole lot of going on there. And that race is sucked a lot of the air out of the governor's race here in Michigan. So, Chris and his in the gubernatorial primary, it's sort of under the radar because so many people focus on that Senate race.
Yeah, one of the reasons I really wanted to make you mentioned you were there, and I wanted to talk about not just the government, about the situation in Michigan is Us United. Um, its mission is to unify across partisan boundary, across partisan divides, and to take people into spaces where we realize that we have so much common ground that where politics can't actually divide us. And again, something we're going to talk a little bit more about. But we take a look at this Democratic Senate primary in Michigan, and this is a vicious personal race among between two people who are nominally on the same side of the
Hmm.
divide. This is how divisive it can get in the family.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've become friends with another former sheriff guy named Mark Lamb, who is now the Republican nominee for Congress in your state
Yeah.
in Buell County. And Mark was talking to me, said the most vicious campaign I've ever had is actually against other Republicans, right? And his own primary was an example of that. And his comment was because he's like, when I run against Democrats, at least they seem to have some moral, ethical lines they stop at. He said Republicans do not. I was like, well, that's an interesting perspective. But to your point, that is where our political culture and our political dialogue is.
Mhm,
It is not where the average American is, and that's part of the problem, and that's part of why Us United exists, right?
mhm,
Um, because I think we do have politics. I mean, they reflect something. I mean, I kind of view politics and who's running for office and who wins. It's a mirror. You hold it up to who we all are, right? I mean, we don't. If we don't like it, it's our fault to some degree. But I also think there are a lot of incentives and a lot of other things that drive politics to more extreme views. And there's a human nature. If we like to watch fighting, we like to watch, all of that angst and anger. And a big chunk of what we try to do at Us United is make unity and compassion at least cool enough in culture that it can hold its own. We're not going to convince people not to watch fights, right? We watch them, we watch car accidents, we watch all those things. But how do we at least make the other side as interesting as an alternative, right? So that's important. But politics has their set of incentives. And one of my favorite things about Chris as a human, as he's been running for office, people will ask him about, you know, who he's running against, whether other Democrats or Republicans. And his answer to me is exactly where we want political discourse to go. He says, look, there are other people running for office. View myself and view them as options. They're not my opponents. They're not my enemies. They are options. I will tell you why I think I am a better option for you, but I'm not denigrating their options. And by the way, that's right. And that's what we need to get back to. And that's what we need our dialogue to say and our leaders to say. And it takes examples. It takes, one of the things I hear all the time in my work, wherever I go. And as I said, I spent 2.5 months in a purple and white pickup truck driving across the country last summer. And I fly and go all places all the time for what we do. And everyone I run into says, we need hope and we need inspiration, right? And somehow I've become some of that, which is personally shocking to me because I struggle myself with those questions of hope.
mhm.
But we need hope. We need inspiration. We need leaders. We need stories. We need content. We need energy that brings that to people because you don't get that typically from politicians and you don't get that typically from media. But you do get it from everyday Americans. And that's what we have to plug back into.
Right. I mean, I do think this is part of as some of the things that you've mentioned have reminded me what one of the challenges when politics is kind of mixed with celebrity culture. Now, that's always kind of been a bit of the case in American politics. There's always sort of been a little bit of glitz and glamour associated with it, but it's chasing excitement and chasing the next high. And there's a lot of really powerful incentives there to divide us when that's the case,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, I mean, you can see it when you go to campaign events and when you're around, you know, when you're around politics, when you're around power, when you're around money, and you say glitz and glamour, it's intoxicating. You get
Mhm,
it, where as in for any human, and you have to maintain humility, and you have to maintain civility, and you have to maintain respect to
mhm,
balance all those things. And I think we can. I mean, I think again, I do. That's what Americans are looking for more and more.
I
And
yeah, I think we
you have
can.
to engage to get it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about yourself. How did
Sure.
where did Us United come from, and how did you fit into that originally?
That is a great question. Um, so I've spent most of my career and my life in investing in finance and in running companies. So I've been a business and investment person for I was for over 25 years. Successful at that. Lived in New York, lived in Los Angeles, and sort of in that zone and world. And yeah, but always a deep, some calling that I never quite knew what it would translate to, that I wanted to make the world a better place as part of whatever I was doing. And there are lots of potential avenues to do that, but it was there. And so May of 2020, if we can go back, hard to believe 6 years ago, George Floyd had just been killed. We're in the midst of COVID, and I'm watching in horror the television with protests and anger and violence and rage in all directions. And I said to myself, I said, this is not the country that I love. And I think we are. With all of our flaws, and we have many of them, as well as we have many wonderful attributes as a country and as a people. It's like what I'm seeing on TV, this is not it. This is not who we are. And I'm yelling at the television. And my much smarter than myself wife, who's been married to me for a lot most of the time, said, first of all, said, Adam, I've been married to you for a long time. You've been yelling at the New York Yankees on television for the whole time, and they've never heard you. Why do you think now someone's going to hear you while you yell at the TV? I'm like, oh my God, yes. And so I had an epiphany moment, and I was like, you know what? I have to do something. And if some people like me, experience, resources, relationships, knowledge, don't give our time, which is the most valuable resource any of us have, things won't change, right? People
Mhm.
make change. Management teams make change. Management teams make success. I'm like, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I don't know what I'm doing, but I am not going back to the office in the traditional way. I'm going to figure out a way to deal with what I see on TV and try to make it better.
Okay, so before you mentioned entrepreneur, like, what sort of businesses did you start? Did you
Sure. Well, I
found
mean,
any?
I started out in private equity right out of college at Morgan Stanley, started to build a career. Then I started three different investment firms. Two of them successful. One of them, the last one, blew up in the financial crisis of 2008 and nine. I was running a hedge fund. Um, and that led me to shift from investing in companies to running companies. And I took over a small public digital media and entertainment company, and helped build that business and built a streaming business and built a content business and a tech business. Left there after 7 years, started a company with a friend of mine in LA. That was long story. That was basically provided cash back and rewards for people who used Uber or Lyft to go to local businesses, in particular restaurants and bars. Well, that business did not survive COVID when every restaurant and a bar in America and every rideshare closed for quite a long time. And so that was in the series of different things I've started. And that led
Mhm.
me to starting Us United. And I said, I'm going to go on a journey and I'm going to see who I meet. And that journey eventually, I was in an interesting group of called Patao, which is a community of CEOs and CMOs from huge companies to smaller startups and everything in between. That from there, I was in a social justice task force, and that led me to Flint, Michigan, of all places, to meet this sheriff who I'd never heard of. But while I was yelling at the television, was on the television because on May 30th, 2020, he rolled up to a big BLM protest in Flint, like every city in America was experiencing that night. And Flint was one of the few cities not to burn and not to have violence because Chris saw hundreds of people, saw armed people, said, you know what? I'm not doing this. I don't know. I'm not going to war here with 150 officers. He took off his guns, his body armor, and he walked into this crowd that was hostile. So what do you all want? And they started saying, walk with us, walk with us. He said, all right, let's walk. And for 6 hours, thousands and thousands of people marched arm in arm, law enforcement and BLM people and local residents saying, we want peace. We want to come together. And CNN happened to be there, and 3.2 billion people around the world in 48 hours saw one of the only cities in America not to burn. 6 months later, I'm in that city with that guy to protect, to serve, and to unify on the cars. And we're brainstorming what the heck are we going to do? And that led to this idea that we need this movement for unity in America. because we stepped back and we said a few things, right? That I think will resonate with you and anyone, right? Almost all Americans are living and working and social media-ing, making that a verb, in ever smaller bubbles, right?
Mhm.
And outside of those bubbles, we then categorize people and we label them. And I'm not saying any of that's bad. It's the only way we can process the world. But when's the last time you or I or anyone compromised with a label?
Mm.
Never going to happen. You only compromise, sympathize with another human being through direct contact. Now, it could be on a screen like this. That's something better in person, but it sure as heck is not, an anonymous post on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. It is sure as not, watching the news on television. It's
Mm.
human connection. So we said we have to figure out in our movement for unity how to get people out of those bubbles and connecting with those with different backgrounds and experiences more frequently if we're going to build unity. The second thing we said is, boy, there's a lot of brands of division. Starting as we started this conversation with the Republican and the Democratic Party. Those are brands of division invested in division right now. And we can keep going no matter what you believe in politics. On each side and beyond, there are brands that are division. Is there any brand of unity? No.
Mm.
We're building it. That's what Us United is.
Right.
The brand of unity, right? And what brand doesn't just mean my cool hat or t-shirt. It is content, it is storytelling, it is leadership, it is tools, it is examples, it is all kinds of pieces, hope and inspiration that you can rally behind. You're never going to have unity if you're fighting brands of division and you don't have one for unity that can engage people, right? In that
Mhm.
and give them all of those resources. And third thing we said is culture. Again, where we started this conversation. Our culture right now rewards fighting and division and elevates them. And as I said earlier, we're never going to prevent that. Part of that's human nature. But how can we plug into culture to make unity cool? So, what still unifies Americans? The number one on the list: sports. We just saw it: World Cup, the Knicks, music, right? Food, cute dogs. Actually have a really 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 cute golden retriever, and whenever I'm walking him, a lot of love.
Mm.
But can we use that? So a lot of what Us United does is tap into those areas of culture to, in particular sports, to use those as tools and resources to bring people together and show what unity looks like and say, hey, this is cool, I get rewarded for this. And so that's where Us United came from,
Mm.
and exploding right now in a lot of ways because it's what people want.
Yeah. And yeah, that's wow. Uh, uh, like, I'm gonna focus on the sports angle for a second because I think it's so important. I remember in 2020, these events that you're recalling. One of the things is that there were no sports on TV,
Right.
right?
Or people were in sports in bubbles, which just didn't feel the same with fake
Didn't
crowd
feel the
noise
same.
and all of that.
But I
Right.
remember opening day, 2020, Major League Baseball. I don't know, it was like in August or something, maybe late July.
Mhm.
'Cause, they did the sprint 60 game season or whatever it was. And again, it was in a
Yep.
bubble and it was weird. Um, and I was living in Georgia at the time, and I turned on the Braves game for it. And the first pitch was thrown, and the color commentator said, "America needs this."
Mhm. Yep.
You
Yep.
know, and that
Sure.
stuck with me all these years. Like, we didn't know how much we needed baseball until it was gone. Now, because of labor strife and division, we might lose it next year too.
We might. Sadly, yes.
But there's a that's an really such an important thing that unifies us. I mean, you mentioned the Knicks. Well, every Republican and every Democrat in New York was especially the politicians were stepping all over themselves to at least pretend to be a Knicks fan,
Right. Right.
right?
Exactly. Right.
And it is one of those, even though of course sports divides us in the sense that you're a Yankees fan and not a Red Sox fan, right? Or
But it's
you're
a
in
heck of a lot more fun to be. It wouldn't be nearly as fun to be a Yankees fan without the Red Sox,
totally,
and
and
vice
we all
versa.
right, and we all know that
Right.
rivalries are not actually division.
Correct. Because you're sharing, you have, they're based on a common passion and love of, in that example, baseball. Or my
Right.
oldest daughter went to the University of Michigan, right? Michigan, Ohio State. They hate each other but in the end, they're loving college football, and they share that in common. And that's what we have to remember, right? For sure, there are times that rivalry and ugliness spills over, but most of the time it's positive, right? Most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
especially in
what we
North
do,
American, I think especially in North American sports, it is a little different with European sports where there's political coding on teams,
sure,
where that's not so much the case in North American sports. It's really just
agreed.
you're a fan of your local team. It's not like you have a communist team in town and a nationalist team in town.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, but exactly right. So I mean, what we're doing is we came up and have rolled out this program called Unity Seats. So we're working right now with all professional teams across every sporting league: baseball, basketball, WNBA, football, hockey, soccer, MLS, and NWSL. And we, on a recurring basis with the teams, will get a half a dozen tickets. We will then work with sheriffs in our Sheriff Unity network in their local communities and the teams to identify two groups of two or three people who do not know each other and are different on the surface. Different meaning they're not neighbors, same neighborhood. Different could be we're different on lots of dimensions, but basically out of the bubble that someone who's not in your bubble, and put you in the Unity seats with the sheriff there or someone from their team, and usually someone from us United. And if you spend 2 or 3 hours watching a baseball game, a football game, a basketball game with other people, well, what happens? By the end, you respect each other, you listen to each other, you have a friendship based on a common interest. You are no longer fighting and angry. You are not saying I'm right, you're wrong. You're discussing. And we get on the Jumbotron with that. We do a lot in social media, so it's not just the game. And the message, right, is Unity got me great seats to see the Yankees or the Mets or the Braves or the Giants or the Rams or whatever it is. And division, I'm home alone on the sofa. Well, now in culture, hey, look at that. I got rewarded for being a unifier. I got promoted. I got on the scoreboard. I got to meet some players. I got different
Mhm.
things happening. I want to be in those Unity seats. How's that happen? And now I have athletes talking about there's nothing more unifying than a locker room. I mean, pick whatever team you want. That's a group of, between 12 in the NBA, 26 in the MLB, and 45 in the NFL. Those people can't be more different from, but they figure out we have a common goal, a common purpose, a reason to figure out how to get along and work towards that. It doesn't always mean we're best of friends. It doesn't mean we're all in agreement on everything, but we know we have to work together, right? Well, that's
Mhm.
the message. And so that's what Unity Seats is. We're expanding that this year even more. 38 days, I believe, 39 days is the 25th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, which is hard to believe. It's been 25 years.
Okay.
Different conversation. But it's Friday, September 11th. So we are organizing and rolling out Friday Night Lights Unity seats at hundreds of high school football games on 9/11, hosted by the local sheriff, and honoring those who lost their lives and reminding us, hey, look at this. Look at these hundreds of communities all across America. We are still the United States of America. That's what we're doing right here. Back to people need hope. People need inspiration. They need examples. They need to see how they're rewarded for being a unified. We're doing that ever more scalable ways, in particular through sports, but same thing with concerts, right? We can have Unity seats at all kinds of music concerts, the same concept, right? And keep going with that as a way to
Mhm.
engage. And our message to everybody, you, me, who's watching it on TV, sees a cool post in social media, is so what can you do to help build unity? You weren't in the seats that day, but here's what you can do: help us break the algorithm. Just
Mhm.
once a week, if you posted something compassionate, community building that you saw you did, we would literally break the algorithm. It would be a completely different output,
I love that.
right?
Break
One
the
minute
app.
of your life, once a week, we can change everything. And that's my message to people, because people are like, Adam, what am I going to do? I'm not a billionaire. I'm not the president. I'm not this. I'm not that. And I always say, look, you vote, and most people do. I said, your one vote, my one vote, independently alone, is meaningless. What's meaningful is the 160 million of us who vote because we have the right to vote. Same thing, break the algorithm. Your one post, my one post that's community building and positive, meaningless. I don't need 160 million posts, 100,000 posts, a million posts. Like more and more people doing things, you break the algorithm, you change the culture, you change the narrative, and you show to anybody and everyone watching, we don't want that fighting and ugliness all the time.
Mhm.
Here we are, we're standing up for unity. That's what we have to do.
Yeah. I mean, this is fundamentally, uh, when Alexis de Tocqueville wrote Democracy in America, civic associations, this is fundamentally what he was talking about. And he said that this was the thing that kept us away from tyranny. This was actually because he was, people in Europe were asking, how come our understandings of the world is that the United States should have fallen into tyranny by now? Why hasn't it? And part of his answer was, well, civic associations. They find things to unify them that are outside of politics. That people from different backgrounds, different classes, find things that they have in common. And that's the
Sports,
secret.
music, all the things we said.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
that was his argument that was a secret sauce to American culture.
Yeah. And social media and technology is blamed for appropriately for a lot of the challenges to that, but it can be the solution, hence break the algorithm. And as I drove across America and I talked to people, Americans get it. Everybody, whether they were 17 or whether they were 80, held up their phone and said, this is the problem. We don't get together in person. We don't have those civic associations to the same degree. We need to do more of that. And they're also saying how, and like that's where I started racking my brain. Well, how, right? Back to break the algorithm. Another thing we do. It's called 30 for Us. We do it first Thursday of every month. We have a big Zoom, open public. Anyone can come. We have a topic, and then we put you effectively in a breakout room with 5 random Americans. Well, now, hey, look at that. I got a group of 5 people all across the country. Who knows who they are? They're different, talking about an issue in a structure that enables and encourages civil discourse. And now all of a sudden, people are learning something and they're just talking to out of their bubble, other people, right? Technology makes that possible. You and I couldn't
Mhm.
be doing this, 20, not even 20, 10 years ago. Like, and arguably before COVID, we didn't have the ability to do this kind of video conversation from anywhere in the world. Well,
Well,
okay, how do we take advantage of it? Like, people figured out, I mean, like, people figured out how to make it negative. How do we make it positive? There's a lot of ways.
there is a certain trend line with communications technology. First instinct is to make it negative. That's what's going to
Right.
happen, right?
Sure.
But we'll come out of it. We'll
Correct.
come out of it.
Correct.
I know we will.
Correct.
Um,
And that's the path we're on. I
right.
agree with you.
That's fantastic. So, here at the Center for American Institutions, we've got a very major program to teach, civics and citizenship and responsibility for students.
Yeah.
And every Monday during the school year, we have our discussion group, and the politics and leadership club meet. And again, it's like that. It's students from across the political spectrum. They come in and it's freewheeling, like it's structured, but it's freewheeling. There is no, you can't get kicked out for saying something bad or anything like that. Like you just be honest. And we try to have these honest conversations. We have anywhere from 50 to 130 students in a given week. We feed them, and people break bread together over these conversations. And I don't it's not about changing minds. It's about offering sympathy for the other side.
Really important. I mean, one of the things as I was traveling across the country, lots of people start to say, come to me and say, so and so who's on the other side, oh, I can't talk to them anymore. They don't listen to me. They're da, 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 da. Or how do I talk to the other side? Right? Like, how do I do this? And for a while, I'm dispassionate, I'm the observer. Pretty quickly, I realized, no, I'm not. I'm out here evangelizing. And I said to people, I would say to anybody, people on the right or the left would come with these same questions. I said, look, well, when you're in those conversations, What do you say when you're talking to someone you don't agree? Well, I tell them why I'm right and they're wrong. It would be almost always some version of the answer. I'm like, well, does that work with you? Well, no. Well, why do you think it's going to work the other way? So I would always say, look, my advice to you as someone who's doing this now all the time and seeing it all the time, start with asking questions and truly listening to the answers. People know when you ask a question just to be lip service to it and you really just want to tell what you want to tell. Ask and listen. And then if you want to have a conversation that's different, share an experience, not a I'm right, you're wrong. Because if it's your lived personal experience, it's very hard for someone to tell you you're wrong. It happened. It happened to you, right? You have some interpretation of it, but something happened. And that will engage in a really honest and fair and balanced conversation because again, you're talking about experience. And so I have so many stories of that. One of the ones that stuck with me the most from my road trip, I was in Montana at a small town fair, and I ended up talking to an interesting woman. Her name was Misty, who was running a booth selling all the aggressive alligator Alcatraz Trump merchandise that drive people on the left insane.
Mhm.
I had a very similar conversation, by the way, 2 weeks later in Omaha, Nebraska, with someone in a t-shirt shop that couldn't have been more to the liberal side of the same messaging, right? So interesting. We always say the other side's worse than the da, 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 da. Like both are doing it. So I'm talking to Misty, and we got into a conversation about immigration. And she said, you know, she brought it up. And she's like, look, the challenge, we need to get rid of all of the people who've immigrated to America who don't love our country. I'm like, well, okay, who's that? She says, Arabs. I said, all of them? She's like, all of them. Okay. She said, Missy, let me tell you a story. Really, two stories. They're related. I said, first, did you know, as I'm sitting here in Michigan today, back to the beginning of our conversation, the largest Arab American community in America is in here in Michigan, in Dearborn Heights, and Hamtramck area of Michigan. And probably about 150, 200,000 voters, citizens who are voters. And I said, did you know, Misty, in the last election, that group split almost 50-50 their vote between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. So half of those people that you just said to get rid of voted for the same person you did. She was like, you're kidding. I'm like, yeah. She's like, wow. I said, I didn't know that. Second thing, I said, let me tell you one more story. Back to my friend Chris, running for governor. He was invited, and again, this is a year and a half ago now, to speak at a campaign event for a Arab American gentleman running for reelection to the city council of Dearborn Heights. And so Chris and I went, and he and I and a couple other people were probably 250 people at the restaurant announcing this. We were probably two of half a dozen white people at this event. I said, so Misty, before this event started, every single person in that restaurant stood up and sang the national anthem. Every single one. I said, I've been to a lot of fundraisers with a lot of white people. I've never, ever, ever seen that. And again, she looked at me and she said, wow, you've changed my mind. I'm wrong. The answer isn't we need to, they clearly love America as much as I do. I was wrong. Right now, I just gave you as extreme, it really happened that way. But the point is, if I just said to Misty, how could you say that, this, that, and the other thing, there's all these like, wall goes down. What I said is, this is something that happened. In this case, directly to me, it can be a story of what happened to a friend, a family member, whatever it may be. But that led her to listen. And she told me some incredible stories that changed my mind in terms of things about, um, in terms of her views on certain issues that on immigration, on MAGA, on um, fixing the country. And that's what we have to get back to. And that's what people want. They don't want the fighting. Like I said, I talked to thousands of people and filmed most of them. I have not had one conversation, and at some point it will, with someone who says, damn it, I got to kill the person on the other side. Like the extremes that you see in social media, you hear on the news, the vast majority of Americans are like, we're not this divided. We're being manipulated by politicians and by media. Even those that think we are don't want to be, right? So we can do this, but we have to remember that about each other.
Yeah. I mean, it's so. Do you mind sharing? What did you say to the woman in Omaha, Nebraska?
Oh, it was a gentleman, and I was like, and I was like, how how do you sell these? Like, I mean, you're offending me. He said, look, it's interesting. What he said is, Adam, I find when I wear this as a young gay man in his 20s, said, I wear this shirt or one of these shirts, I have really interesting unifying conversations because people actually come talk to me more often than not and say, why are you wearing that? What does
Yeah.
that mean? And I explain back to the storytelling, and he'll tell the story of why and what's going on in his life. And he gets that story back in whatever's going on in someone else's life, and they find common ground. He said, I need to do this sometimes because that's the only way to have a conversation, which I thought was really interesting.
Hmm.
Right. It reminds me, have you ever come across Daryl Davis
Yeah, yeah,
or know who Daryl is? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
For
He was
people,
here actually
Daryl is an,
not too long ago.
yeah, Daryl is an incredible man. Um, Black man musician, played with Miles Davis, and 25 years ago, ended up on this path. He found himself in a conversation with someone in the Ku Klux Klan who basically debating music, and the man didn't realize that this music that he loved, this country music, pieces of it, had an origin in slave music. And Daryl didn't believe it, but they kept talking. And by the end of that conversation in a follow-up dinner, the gentleman, after spending time with Daryl, who was like the first Black person he'd ever spoken to extensively, gave Daryl his clan robes and said, I'm leaving the clan. I want you to have these because if not for you, I wouldn't have given this up. Since then, Daryl has, I think, through conversations like that, I don't remember the numbers, 120, or if I'm 20 or dyslexic, against 210, hundreds of, between 100 and 200 people, he's had these kinds of conversations who have left the clan or other similar organizations and given him the robes or other things and have become friends. And the point being, because they've never talked to each other
Yeah.
and they found their human together. And that's where we all shut down. We stay in our bubbles, we get on technology, we don't listen, we dehumanize, and then we don't remember what we
Mm.
really all, back to something you said, right? We all want most of the same things. We want a safe life. We want to be healthy. We want to take care of our families. We want roof, home, and shelter, right? We want the same. We want our country to succeed. Like, we want to be safe. Like, we have to remember that. And that's where these interactions happen. But those are the conversations, and they're through storytelling. Daryl's not out there saying, you're a racist and you shouldn't hate me because I'm Black. He's spending time, they're sharing stories, and they're realizing they love music or they love sports or they love these different pieces.
Mhm.
And they're much more in common than different. And that's where I mean, it's there. We have to get back to it.
Yeah. The Daryl Davis story has always interested me. I found it interesting, and one of the places where you saw division was between Daryl Davis and some of the younger members of Black Lives Matter, where they were very critical of him because they didn't think he was doing enough, and he wasn't radical enough, and he wasn't being divisive enough. And Davis was like, "No, this actually works." And they were critical, and they said, "You're an old head kind of thing, and you don't understand how it works in 2026." Um, I was like, "Well, no, it actually still works the same way. It's soul by soul, right?
I mean,
One
I was
soul of God,
watching
you know?"
actually last night. I started last night watching again the movie Selma by Ava DuVernay. Um, and what you just described, the same conversation was seen with Martin Luther King Jr. speaking with John Lewis and another member of SNCC. Same conversation in Selma. You old people, you just want media and camera. You know, and the same Malcolm X, Martin Luther King conversation till towards the end of Malcolm X's life, where he actually moved more towards nonviolence.
Mhm.
Was the same debate, right? And in the end, rarely, rarely does violence lead to a better outcome. I mean, we had to have World War II. There are moments, right? But rarely is that the answer because you just dig in. It's back to what we said. If I
Yep.
tell you you're wrong and I'm right, you dig in. If I talk to you and I find the things that have more in common, we can move forward. And that story's throughout what you described, whether it's Daryl Davis, whether it's Martin Luther King Jr., those stories are throughout history.
Yep.
And history has always shown that conversation and dialogue almost always, right? Like I said, there wasn't a dialogue with Adolf Hitler in World War II. That was not going to happen, right? There are moments. They're not that common. We find much more war because we abandon dialogue. We get to ego. We get to confrontation much more quickly than we should sometimes.
But there might have been conversations in the 20s in Germany that could have saved it,
Sure. Sure, we
right?
can absolutely go back to looking at post World War I and the Weimar Republic
Right.
and the Treaty of
Um,
Versailles. There's a
you
whole
know,
host of things that we helped do to create that.
one of the most remarkable, and I'm just gonna, I moved to the South in 2019. I don't live there now, but I did. And coming out of COVID, one of the first things that, once COVID was over, I went to a big NASCAR race, right?
Mhm.
Got to do that, right?
Yeah.
And at the event, in the row in front of me, there were six young guys, probably 18, 19, 20 years old. Two of them had Confederate flag tattoos on their shoulder.
Mhm.
You know who their four friends were? They weren't white. Their friends were black,
Yeah.
and they had the flag on their tattoo. So it's like, So anyway, I'm not judge. My point is not to try to rationalize why they have the tattoo or anything like that. Um, my point is to say the one thing they had in common is they really like fast cars, and
Unity seats. You
we
just
really got
described
fast.
Unity seats and they didn't
Yeah,
even know they
right.
were in them.
We really like fast cars. We both really like fast cars. Nothing else really matters right now because those cars are really fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
look, it's beautiful.
yeah.
That we do. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is that we are turning our road trip and post that and the work we're doing in Unity Seats into a documentary film right now.
Okay.
Because we have a lot of surprising knowledge and conclusions. But start that film with the following quote. If you want to hate America, turn on the news. If you want to love America, drive across it. And as someone who has done both, it is 1,000%, 1,000,000% correct. Because if you drive across this country, or even just a few places, and you talk to people that you don't know, you were blown away by Americans, right? I understand why most people, when they run for president, are changed humans from spending, year and a half driving across this country and talking to all kinds of people. It is inspiring. It is beautiful. It is educational. I mean, learned so many things, and we shared them all on our socials and or in this movie. Like one of my favorite, because we'd ask everybody, "What does unity mean to you?" or "How do you build unity?" And woman who owned with her mom, a restaurant we met in Birmingham, said, "Look, unity, 5 mile rule." I don't know. I'm in Birmingham. Like the idea that I might be unified with someone in California or in Texas, I don't know. But it's like if I worry about my 5 miles around where I live and I take care of them and help my neighbors, I shop locally, I support local businesses, I get involved in my community just a little bit to make sure that helping making it a better place, not just complaining, right? It's like if I take care of my 5 miles and I unify my 5 miles, then great, because my 5 miles is going to eventually overlap with yours if you live a mile away, which keeps moving. So eventually I am unified with someone in California or someone in Washington or someone in Illinois, even if I'm in Birmingham, Alabama,
Hmm.
and it may feel too big, but if we all do that 5 mile rule, we get there.
Yeah.
She's right, 1,000%. And she's crystallized it to something incredibly simple to understand. Because it seems like, hey, I was last week, 2 weeks ago. I spent the first half of the week in Fort Worth, Texas, at the Texas State Sheriff's Association convention and some other things in Texas. And then I had to go to Los Angeles for a board meeting and some other meetings. So people like Texas and LA and Dallas and Fort Worth, those two places are incredibly different. No, they're not. They are not, right? Same people, same foods, same, shopping, same call. Like they're very much in common. We're told they're different, but that's the 5 mile rule. I don't have to, if I'm in Fort, I don't have to convince myself I'm unifying with someone in LA. But if I do the 5 miles, eventually I got to LA. We got it. Then we got unity, right?
Yeah.
You learn this when you go across America. You don't learn it sitting, you know, in your bubble,
Yeah.
wherever it is.
No, I mean, I think the we saw this over the summer with lots of visitors to the United States who've only ever seen the United States through the news. And so many of them, just because of the nature of the way that the World Cup is set up, you got to drive if you're going to go to
Yeah.
various games. And so many visitors drove across the United States that it was only in driving across the United States, not just staying in their hotel in New York City or Boston or LA or wherever it was, but driving across the United States that they encountered it. And really, you could see an enormous degree of appreciation for it.
And look, it's something we have to remember when we judge and look at other countries and other people. The governments at any given time are not the people, right? There's not ever that case. I mean, again, go back to our German example, right? There were absolutely people in Nazi Germany who were seduced and part of a very, clearly a very destructive and negative, incredibly awful movement and moment. But not, but a lot of Germans were just trying to survive what the heck was going on, right? And, you know, right now we're in a war in Iran. The Iranian people are not their government. They're repressed by their government. We could talk about that forever. I mean, I mean, Persians, of people of Persian descent are one. I mean, some of the most educated people in the history of the world, some of the most inventive people in the history of the world, most successful people in the world, the most lovely people in the world. And there are lots of Persians living in America who, and I have some great friends. They're great. Don't confuse the people with the government all the time, right? Just like today, don't confuse Americans with its government, whether it's the current administration or the prior administration, right? Governments, it's as we've talked about, politics is at a different level of polarization and division in view than the people at large. Now, it's up to us to eventually vote what we want and change that or not. But the people are beautiful in this country. The people are beautiful in Iran. The people are beautiful in Germany. The people are beautiful in Ghana. I mean, let's remember that, right? Let's remember that and find ways forward.
And if that doesn't inspire you, the reality is if we don't figure out a way to do it, it's pretty darn ugly.
Yeah, I certainly said, look, because I get lots of people who will tell me, "What are you doing? This is never going to work," or there's do it something different. I'm like, look, if we, I don't have all the answers, but what I know is if what we're trying to do at Us United doesn't work and work with what other people are trying to do, I can see the ditch we're in and we're only going to get deeper in the ditch. So we got to try things to get out. And with things you and I have been speaking about are not the only ideas. They're good ideas. There are plenty more. Um, I try to unify the unifiers. I mean, we have to do all this together. And we didn't get here in overnight. This has
Hmm.
been, I could argue, you can pick your start date. You're a political historian. You certainly got to go back 50, 60 years to somewhere in the 70s or the early 80s when we really started a shifting political climate. I mean, I've looked at, like probably you have, there's a lot of voting maps and that are, animated histograms of just congressional voting patterns from the 40s or 50s through today, and how you just see how the purple or the red and blue votes in the middle overlapping more and more, so that every congressional term you see all the red and all the blue votes and very, very little that gets in the middle that both sides vote
Cool.
for. That extremism took 50, 60 years in our Congress. So I'm not naive to think what we're doing now is going to change everything in a year. I kid with people will be done by Christmas and people laugh at me. I'm like, yeah, exactly. But it doesn't have
The
to take
war, the
50.
war will be over by Christmas. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have to take 50 years to get back to more purple. It
Well,
can, I mean, I don't, it's a multi-year process, but it doesn't take 50. Part of it, technology can accelerate it in a good way.
and it's also there's no such thing as total victory. It's it's about just doing better and
Yeah.
preventing total collapse.
Yeah. And look, I mean, back to my Texas and California trip in the same week, right? I think each of those states represents the negative of effectively one party rule in different ways. There are a lot of things that don't work well in Texas because one party has put in place a set of policies that they believe in and their base believe in with no compromise, no negotiation, no other ideas. And the same thing is true in California, the same exact thing. And we are a stronger country, we are a stronger culture when we have two, at least two, vibrant political parties debating, but with the belief that together they have to get to a solution to move forward, not total victory over total defeat. Because you learn, right? Like nobody has a monopoly on the answers. And the states that, I mean, and I saw the same thing on my road trip, right? Most people are purple. Where I found the deepest belief that we're divided was in the reddest and the bluest states. In the states that are pink or light blue or purple, people don't think we're as divided. But at that town fair in Montana, oh, they thought we were divided. They didn't want to be. And at a coffee shop in Lexington, Massachusetts, they thought we were divided. They didn't want to be, right?
Mhm.
But that's because they're in deeper bubbles. It feels more divisive. But that's the point, right? Like to get the combination, purple gets to the better answer every time. And it's been true throughout history. Throughout history.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing is that we live in a society where, in theory, you know, governments change. Different parties take power through peace. And the only way that that's going to be possible moving forward, and I think that's something we all want, the only way that's possible moving forward is if we trust the other side to kind of like us.
Back to our sports locker room, where we are always going to be different people, different perspectives, diverse views. But I got to trust my teammates. I've got to trust my neighbors. I got to trust whomever it is that we all want to get to the same place, right? My neighborhood walking my dogs is a lot safer because I and others are walking our dogs in that neighborhood. There are people out, their dogs out. I go away for a couple weeks. I want my neighbors to know that I'm not there and they're keeping an eye on my house and vice versa, right? And I'm not asking them who they vote for. They're not asking me. And it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I mean, that to me, the lesson that I'd hoped would survive COVID, and I don't think it has, is that we are all intertwined. Like our health is intertwined. I don't care who you are, right? Didn't matter who you are, white, black, green, yellow, purple, whether you were rich or poor, a disease in that example doesn't ask any of those questions. And we are as strong or weak as our lowest common denominator. And so there was lots incorrectly done. There were lots of, I mean, I'm not, last time was litigate COVID, but I think we didn't even take the right lesson away, which is we are all codependent upon each other. And in that sense, we have to figure it out, right? Whether it's COVID, whether it's climate, right? We are codependent. Fires in Canada that threw smoke all over the upper Midwest, where I'm sitting right now, all the way to New York City, where you couldn't breathe or see for weeks and months, for days, right? We're interdependent. And the Canadians, by the way, their reasons, their fires, no different than the state of Colorado has been burning all summer, or the state of Utah has been burning, now Washington or California. Like, and you may not live there, you may not like whatever, but that smoke's going where you are. We have to solve these together. We are interdependent. We have one planet. We are one set of people. Like, and people know it. I know they know it. But we have leadership that uses that to divide, and we have to change that. We have to start by building the dialogue and relationships together to start to put forth the different things.
Well, I mean,
Change, break the algorithm, and show that.
yeah, it's just too easy. The thing is, though, it's too easy for me to raise money off the guy who runs the shirt place in Omaha, Nebraska, and all of his colleagues, or the lady who runs the stall in Montana.
Right.
Like it's just too early. It's just too easy. It's like it's the easy button, right? Like if you're
Well, it's in politics. I mean, you have to. I mean, I'm curious if you. I mean, this is my observation: is that there. I mean, there's surveys and data. 70-ish% of Americans are sort of in the middle. Mathematically, I like one standard deviation from the mean, right? That's where they are. There's 15% of the people on each side invested in and committed to division and building more of it. But what continues to happen is that most of that 70% says, I'm out. I show up every 2 years or 4 years to vote. I look around and it's disgusting. It's awful. What am I going to do? I hold my nose. I vote. And I'm like, I can't deal with this. I got to go. I got to go to work. I got to pay my mortgage. I got to take care of my kids. I got to go to school. I got life. I don't have time for all this noise. And the only people left are the ones invested in division getting louder. Then you show up 2 years later and you look around like, how the heck did it get worse? And the answer is it got worse because you're not there. If we all want this to change, we can't disappear for those 2 or 4 years. We don't have to be political junkies. You don't have to watch, Fox News or CNN or comment on everything or read every article, but you do have to participate to set the culture. You do have to be engaged enough that people see that moderate voice in that community. Back to my break the algorithm, whatever it may be, because then eventually different people run for office on each side who are more modern, more balanced, because they realize there's someone they can talk to. Because right now, they got to get in a primary that is usually extreme. Like, we can go down all of that. We, the people, that's why the Constitution's preamble starts that way. We, the people, back to your civics course, we have to be engaged enough to drive the culture to get to the changes we want. If we do a little bit, and tech will let you, it all changes.
Yeah, and the tech will let you. That's the thing.
Yeah,
It will.
it will. Yeah,
It doesn't have an opinion, actually.
yeah.
It's just a tool.
And we can use the tool for good, not just for evil. Right?
Yeah.
It
Uh,
can be used for good.
yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, I know that you've got a meeting that you've got to jump onto, so thank you very much for all of your time, Adam. Before I forget,
Yeah,
how can
great.
people get involved?
Well, a couple ways. I mean, you can go to our website, us-united.org, and learn more. Follow us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, because we're sharing all of our content and stories. And the big one is help break the algorithm. We have a unity pledge on all of our socials and our website. You take that and once a week do that, post that positive community building, unity building example that you did or you saw. Once a week, 1 minute, and share it with your friends, right? Use technology to its benefits, right? That's how you can get involved. Then there's lots more, volunteering, unity seats, helping a community. There's 1,000 ways, but just take give me a minute of your time once a week. That's all I ask.
Right on. Well, Adam, thank you very much. Best of luck, and can't wait to
Thanks.
hear more from you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.